Ghana has reviewed its constitution before. Reports were written, promises were made, and then nothing changed. The 2025 Constitution Review Committee says its work is done. Its final report has now been submitted to President John Dramani Mahama, raising once again that central question. Will this review finally confront the excesses of power in our democracy? Or perhaps it will join the long list of unfinished reforms? I am Kemini Amano, and this is Hot Issues. The 1992 Constitution is widely criticized for empowering the executive at the expense of Parliament, local government, and independent institutions. In already aired parts of this interview, we explored extensively how the CRC hopes to cure this problem. But in this edition, we focus mainly on Parliament and how your MPs should represent you. My guest is Chairperson of the Constitution Review Committee, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. Prof, you're welcome to Hot Issues.
Thank you for having me.
You have submitted your report to the president.
Yes, we have.
I'm sure you're relieved that the work is almost over.
Almost over. This is just a pause.
Yes, this is just a pause
yes.
in all the hard work. But help us understand, how did you get to this point where you have a report to present?
Well, it's been a long 11 months. We were appointed, I think, January 19th, thereabouts, and inaugurated on the 30th. And so that meant essentially the first week of February is when we had our first meeting. And at that first meeting, of course, we had to get familiar with each other. Not all of us knew each other or one another, so we got to know each other well a bit. And then we set a first meeting date. At the time, we had no office, so we met at CDD initially, and then we moved online for subsequent meetings. We had to do a few things first. The terms of reference that we had been given was fairly open-ended. It just says, look over some of the past work that's been done, which would be typically the CRC1 report 2011, and then there was a CRCC report that had been commissioned by the Honorable Chairman Sabonsu before he left. So we had those two reports, and then we were supposed to look at them and then go out again and talk to Ghanaians and get a sense of what it is that they were thinking, and then give our own sense of what must happen. So we felt that was open-ended. It just gave us a blank check. So we had to do one thing first, which is, what are the principles that would guide us in our work? As a committee, we needed to agree on certain ground rules. So we had that as the first order of business when we met. Then at the same meeting, we agreed on a quorum. There are 8 members. How are we going to make decisions? Quorum to commence business, to start a meeting, and then quorum to make decisions. Then we agreed that only five of us could start a meeting, but to make decisions, we needed at least maybe 6 to be present, and then we will be by consensus. We said we will deliberate, reach consensus, and if consensus fails, we'll vote. And then the issue became, what if it's 4-4? And they said, well, the chairman can have a casting vote. Thankfully, we never had to get to that point. So we really just reached decisions mostly by consensus and deliberation. And if you were in a minority, we also gave you the right to write a minority opinion in this report. So far, no member exercised that option. But there were a few instances where members were in a minority but decided that, okay, we will not make a fuss of it. So then we decided, okay, in terms of approach, what are we going to do? You could do a constitutional review in several ways. You could just do a clause-by-clause review and review the whole thing. And we said, well, we're looking to solve problems. Our terms of reference mentioned actionable recommendations that would create an inclusive, enhanced democracy and all of those things. So we said, well, we are supposed to solve particular problems with governance that may be standing in the way of our democracy growing and getting better, or our development progressing. So let's only focus on those things in our constitution that are either identified as a source of a problem, or if they themselves are not the source of the problem, that may offer a solution to a problem. So we'll focus on a problem-solving approach. So we settled on that so that we will not then have to go through clause by clause. It's essentially, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Right.
So we're only looking for those places where there's something to fix. So we agreed all of those things as background rules, and then we had to find a secretariat. We are 8 members, but it was to be presumed that we would work with people who would be the project coordinator, who would be our comms person, who would do this, who would do that. So we sorted out all of that. That we had to do with government. We had to go to the Attorney General because we did a budget, all of those things. Then we had to have an office at some point. So we did all of those housekeeping stuff. That took us probably the best part of almost all of February.
Right.
And then into March. Then we said, well, initially our time our deadline was sometime in June of this year. So it was a tight leash. We were on a tight leash, and we said, okay, we have to start. Even before our budget is released, we have to start. Thankfully, we did get some support from International IDEA, which is an intergovernmental organization that does a lot of work supporting commissions like this globally. The Swiss embassy also gave us a donation to start some of our initial meetings, and then the British FCDO also helped. So we started then having a series of engagements in Accra. We decided that we would have the engagements first based on thematic areas. So we divided the Constitution's 20-something chapters into about a dozen thematic areas, so that we clustered some things to get all of that into 12. And then the first would be to find those people who either had worked on those matters, were experts in those matters, were either civil society people, academics, public servants, public officers, media people, who were interested in a particular subject. So you take, say, anti-corruption. We would find those in the space who focused on that. We would invite them to a meeting, mostly held in hotels in Accra. And so those thematic areas were the first things that we did.
Did this happen across the entire country?
No. So the thematic engagements were mostly stakeholder engagements, largely in Accra. So you could call them the elite engagements. We did those ones. And then we also decided that, well, thematically, it's fine, but you're not going to get everybody. So let's also try and get stakeholders across interests. So academia, labor organizations, business interests, the clergy. So we also divided society into particular interest groups and met identifiable interest groups also in Accra. Then the third category were those who had worked the Constitution in the last 30-something years at very close quarters, former presidents, former vice president, former speaker, former justices, chief justice, those people. We met them at their homes one by one, in their offices. So we had to go to a brief to meet President Kufuor, come down to Accra, Nima to meet Nana Akufo-Addo, meet Mahama himself, meet with Dr. Bawumia, meet with former Chief Justice of Akufu, Bagbin, Okwe, all of them. So when we put all of that together, we got a sense of those who are in the Accra bubble, you would say, right? The elite players. What do they say? What do they think? And those were valuable because really these are people who operate within the constitutional framework a bit in close quarters, or who are close to the corridors of power in Accra. But then we said, of course, that's not sufficient. You're not going to get the real feel of what Ghanaians want if you did that. So then we added, they were part of the plan from the beginning, to do stakeholder engagements across the country. So we traveled, starting from the northernmost part of the country down. So because of budget constraints, we couldn't do 16 regions. We did 10, the 10 old regions.
I see.
So we held engagements in each of those places, the regional capitals, all the way down. We did some X-Space engagements, social media.
So to what extent would you say that ordinary voices were captured in these recommendations?
Hugely. I mean, there was an interesting dynamic. Is once you step out of Accra, people are freer to speak their mind, right? Because they don't necessarily see themselves in the Constitution. The average person, some of the big players here, I'm not saying that, I'm not attributing that to any particular person, but the sense you get is that because they are proximate to power and, some of them see themselves in it, in the document, sometimes that shapes the kinds of things that they are willing to change. Say, maybe, let's keep this one. Well, if you're an MP, and we are saying MP shouldn't be in the executive, you have a different reaction to it. But when we stepped out of Accra, we got the sense immediately that it was a different kind of conversation. People were freer, and also had more interesting things in terms of what they needed to change in their lives.
What shocked you the most?
But actually, it wasn't, I think, well, shock would not be the word, but I think that large portions of the country look ungoverned. It's like when you travel the country, and because of civil society work, we travel a lot too, you get a sense that it's not that, I think there is definitely a huge gap, developmentally. I mean, the whole place is developmentally in deficit, right? The country itself, even Accra. So you don't have to go very far from here. But I think once you travel the country, and we did it, mostly by road, then you get a sense that there is a lot of stuff we need to do, right? That there's really, and you could tell from the opinions that were expressed that people were quite dissatisfied. They like the democracy that they are seeing in terms of an ability to speak your mind, to vote for the government you like, to vote against a party you don't like, to throw them out of office. They like those things. But I think they were getting a bit tired of it, that, so we changed these parties, so then what? So for most people, I think you could get the sense that the democracy was becoming choiceless for them. It's almost like we have these two are stuck. Right. We go here, we come back. We go here, we come back. Our lives are still the same, right? And I think that one of the openness with which people spoke their minds was quite refreshing to see. In some places, and these were mixed crowds. You had chiefs in there, persons with disability, young people, students, all the mix. But everybody spoke their mind very openly.
Things they have been waiting to say.
Yes, are clearly venting. I mean, many of the things, and you could also see, it was very clear that people didn't feel represented, notwithstanding voting for your MP and all of that. Many of the problems that were brought before us, if you had good representation, you wouldn't need a traveling commission to come from Accra once every 10 years to come and sample your opinion. So it was very clear that people really had a lot on their chest they wanted to get off their chest. And that basically they had no place to go. They didn't feel listened to. They didn't feel that there was an audience for them. They didn't feel that they were represented. So a lot of the things they were telling us is like, why have you waited this long? You have an MP. You have an assembly. Why must it take this? So where we don't see them.
How does this report deal with that?
An issue like that? Well, we capture it in many different ways, right? So, for example, in the sections on Parliament, we're talking about, we've titled it Toward a People-Centered Democracy. And there's a message there. That our democracy is in the boxes on some of the formalities of democracy, but it's not hugely people-centered, right? That it's centered too much, it's about them. It's about it's become something, it's an us versus them kind of stuff. And we said, look, let's recenter our democracy. Let it be about the people. After all, that's what democracy is about. Demos, people. And it's government of the people, by the people, for the people. Let it be about the people. So this distancing of the political class from the population, we're trying to bridge somewhat. So, for example, we have in there a right to public participation. How many Ghanaians saw the Okada bill before it was passed? But whether Okada is legal or not legal, in what ways it's legal or not legal, affects all of us hugely. We're in traffic with Okada every time. But a bill gets passed, and you only know that it's been passed. In some places, that would not happen. Why? Because the Constitution has in those places a right to public participation. Every bill must receive public input before it gets passed, so that you carry the people along. It's not that we vote, and then the next 4 years, the MPs we vote for take it to mean a license to make law for us without our participation. So we have included, for example, a right to public participation. We've also required that MPs must hold civic engagements, not partisan ones. They must go home and hold civic engagements with their constituents at least once a year or something of the sort. They go home, but they tend to meet their party networks. They go to funerals, they go to do this. But we said, no, do the kind of thing we did with the constituents. Sit them down in a town hall meeting, let them ask you questions, answer back, give them feedback, report back to them. So we have included that as some. So some of the things we saw and experienced and heard, many of them are actually here. We are trying to practicalize them.
The argument that some of these MPs will make, and I'm not holding brief for them, but based on what they have said in the past, will be that time will be a challenge, also cost of doing some of these things. Are those justifiable excuses?
Sure. I mean, sure, absolutely. But these are your constituents. You came from them. This is where, you either live among them to qualify to represent them at all, or you hail from there. And invariably, most of them have homes in the constituencies. You do go back, but you tend to go for social events, not to report back to your constituents. You do go back, but you tend to go to meet your party executives. And we're saying beyond those things, set aside time and meet the constituents and tell them they sent you to represent them in Accra. What's the story in Accra? What are you telling them back from Accra? And engage them. They have a lot of questions. There's some brilliant ideas to offer. So for example, in some of our engagements, especially associations representing persons with disability, some insightful ideas came. So we were talking about retiring age, for example, and then they said, look, this retiring age of 60, for some of us, effectively, it gives us a working life of no more than 10 years. Because by the time we get through education and find a job and all of that with our disability and all of that, time is run out. We don't have opportunities for work. So can you extend the retiring age for persons with disability to maybe add 2 or 5 more years? It's not the kind of insight, if you are sitting down and reading the Constitution, you will get on your own, right? Somebody's experience has to be related to you that way to get it, right? So you got a lot of interesting insights, and I think...
So did you make changes or recommend changes to the retirement age?
Well, the retirement age, yes, we have recommended that. These things, the committee took note of a number of different... In fact, one of the recommendations we got is that, look, do you know how long the average Ghanaian or average middle-class Ghanaian even lives? Says the age 60, very few people get there. We didn't even know that. Once you look at the statistics, not that many people get to 60. So it says if you increase to 65, so what I'm saying that we thought, well, okay, so it's not our decision to make. You need a lot of actuarial evidence, statistical stuff about life expectancy, longevity rates. So we said, look, don't put retirement age in the Constitution. Take it out and do it by statute, so that as and when the data suggests that you need to raise it, then we raise it. It's so that you don't have to amend the Constitution to raise minimum, So we said deconstitutionalize it, do it by legislation, and grant some organizations the leeway to make years longer. For example, universities. Everywhere you go in the world, academics retire very late. Already at 60, but for public service generally, our judges are retiring at 65 and 70. So it's there. So why must university lecturers, some of them still very mentally sharp, at 60, some of them are actually not even hit their prime yet.
Will that then make it a parliamentary decision to be made through laws or in conjunction with the executive?
Yes, because then you to pass the law, and the president has to sign. So whenever you pass the law, it includes the executive. So this is what we are proposing, that don't keep 60 years in the Constitution, take it out. And then as and when you need to, play with it, it's easier to do in Parliament. We can have a much bigger deliberation around it. Everybody is talking. And then allow some institutions like universities a bit of a range so they can go up. But there are universities, faculty retiring at 60, then they re-engage them on contract. It's so everybody knows that the age is not working. Let them work to 70. Let them work. I mean, one of our members, he had his 80th birthday while we were doing the work. I had no clue that he was 80. No idea at all. And he's surprised that he said,
why he didn't look it?
Not at all. I mean, because of also the energy he brings to the work.
But Prof, the argument will also be for young people who are looking to get into the workforce.
Yeah, but it's not. You don't use retirement age that way. There is a problem of employment. The 80-year-old who leaves the classroom is not going to be replaced by the guy looking for a job. You know, right? I mean, it's not. It doesn't work that way easily.
But
right?
we've got to make room
Yes.
to be able to pay.
Oh, absolutely. You have to make room, but it's not the same thing. I mean, the years of experience, so you let the person retire and then you bring them back and say they're on contract. They're still keeping a slot there anyway, right? So we're saying, look at the issue a bit more holistically, right? Retirement age, yes, has some connection with, mobility through the system, but let's not use it as an employment kind of valve.
In recommended and is taken out.
Sure.
Did it also take into consideration people who occupy political offices? We had the issue of the IGP and the likes.
Sure. No, so that's the interesting thing, right? So many of the people who retire from the public sector recycle themselves back into the system by going, this applies only to people who are appointed into office. But elections, we tend not to have any age limit. So you can retire from education service and then go and compete, even though you have
elected
retired.
Office.
There's no limit, right? Because I think the idea is that it is the people themselves who you are going to represent. They can look at you and say, this person is too old to represent me. I'm not going to vote for them, right? So appointive office and elective office, there's a bit of a difference there. Right, because at least here we are telling and this issue came up when we were discussing whether to put a maximum age on the presidency. Some had suggested, others thought, no. And eventually it says, look, if the people look at you and they say, this guy is 90, and so I'm not going to vote for a 90-year-old man to get to the presidency or a 90-year-old woman, that's their choice to make. The people themselves know what they are getting. It's not as if your age is off limit. They know your age, and if they choose to vote for you, that's their problem. But in the same vein, when we were talking about the minimum age for presidency, it's currently 40.
Right.
And we said, well, it should come down to 30.
To 30.
That's what I'm saying, but how can a 30-year-old? It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that when you are 30, and you stand for president, you're going to get elected. It's for the people to decide. If you're 30 and they feel you have accomplished a lot and you have a lot to offer, your maturity shows, your experience shows at 30, and they want to vote for you, that's their choice. In many of the countries that are far more advanced, they are electing much younger people, right? So 40 years seem to us a bit high, because even in 1960, the Constitution allowed 35-year-olds to stand for president. In 1969, when we had a Westminster Constitution, in the Westminster system, the parliamentary system, because they don't have presidents, they don't have, the executive is chosen from Parliament. So the minimum age at that time was 21, right? 21, you could get into Parliament. And from Parliament, you then became a minister. So that's how, I think President Kufuor became a minister or deputy minister at 28 or something in his days. He was already in Parliament. The minimum way to get to Parliament was 21. So once you are in Parliament, you could become the prime minister at 21, 22. So we've had a system before where much younger people were allowed to get into government. So what's the big deal about lowering the age to 30? Our demographics show that a larger percentage of the population is below 35.
So that decision was taken based on the demography?
Demography, and also just, we are a youthful population.
Being abreast with time?
Absolutely, we're a much youthful population. I mean, you can't still, at this time, expect that, somebody should be 50 before they can, no, it's not going to fly.
Let's take a few steps back to the changes in Parliament. When you talked about properly representing the voices of the people in the chamber, those civil engagements, those town hall style engagements they would have with their people. What is the recommendation the amendments make so that it does not become a routine, so to speak, that the voices indeed end up on the floor of Parliament?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. So South Africa has, this is a very interesting point. They were the first to include, at least in an African constitution, this right to public participation. And a case came out of that provision in the Constitution where a law was challenged as having been passed by the Parliament without the participation of the people. And the issue became, okay, you had this routine engagement, but you didn't take it seriously. So the court says you must consider participation is just not just setting up a platform for them to show face and then you check a box and said, yeah, we had a participation. Said, you must show evidence that you took it seriously, that at least you took on board. It's not that you have to accept it, but at least consider it, right? So, but that one is difficult to legislate, right? You know, so many interests, so many voices, so many ideas come to the attention of a member of parliament. You can't say that, well, your constituents' ideas are superior to any other idea, so you should vote in lockstep.
Right.
An MP is there representing multiple interests, represent the constituents, represents their party, represent the country, represent themselves, because we chose you for a reason, right? We chose you amongst the other contestants, even within your own party. We chose you because we thought you had something unique to present. So I think we should also allow MPs to bring to the fore their own unique perspectives on things and not say, well, your constituents want this, so you must go and vote for that in Parliament. You know, that's not normally how things, but at least listen to them.
Right.
Engage them, look at their concerns, because you are also a lobbyist for them. You are not just here to pass legislation. You don't pass legislation for your constituents. You come to Accra and let Accra understand the plight of your constituents, how life is lived back home.
Do you see the MPs agreeing to this recommendation?
Oh, I think they would love it. Why not? Right? I mean, because, you know, it's absolutely, I don't see how an MP would not like it, that do engage your constituents on a regular basis. NCC is in every district. They can facilitate a lot of those engagements. In fact, one of the beautiful things we discovered is just how valuable the NCC is in the districts. You know, they do a lot of engagement, and they facilitated all of our engagements across the country. So they do have a system of bringing people together in localities and having these dialogues and conversations. I mean, I don't think you need to be told as an MP that this is valuable for you to do.
On the size of Parliament, the committee is recommending an amendment to Article 93A.
That's correct.
To provide that Parliament shall consist of no more than 276, the current number.
That's correct.
Why is that important?
Well, first of all, we had to come to a decision about a cap, right? And so once we agreed that Parliament needed to have a ceiling, then the question became, what's the number? Every other number would be arbitrary. So we said, well, why don't we just stick with the number that we have, right? Because if you said 300, then what's the basis for the 300? What's the basis for 280? What's the basis for any other number? So we said, well, at least now we've settled at this number for now. The message is what is important. We need a cap. And we don't think we should grow more than we have already.
And so beyond that, we see that you're also making amendments to Article 47 to provide that the Electoral Commission, essentially,
that's what's going to happen.
Looking at
once you cap. So the U.S., for example, and it's the African examples I could give as well, but the U.S. Congress the size has not changed since 1911. Population has grown from about 89 million in 1911 to about 300 and something. But the size of Parliament or the Congress is the same. What does it mean? It means that when population grows, you have to change the numbers, right? So what we're saying in 47 is that the Electoral Commission already, they do constituency demarcation. But every time they do constituency demarcation, they increase the number. But that doesn't have to be so. In many places, when population increases, and they do census and redemarcation, they don't increase the number in Parliament. They change the constituency boundaries. Say, you have lost population, you have gained, you have done that, you have gained, so that's how it's done. And It's going to be new for us because we've never done that before, but it's commonly done.
You're asking for a more scientific way of doing this.
Absolutely. There is a science about it. The EC itself knows. There is methodology, there's a science about how you do this. But it's also sensitive to the fact that if you are not careful, you are going to basically just overrepresent the big cities. So if you just lump if you just use population, then Accra, Kumasi, and a few places are going to gobble up all the constituencies in the country because some places are losing population to these places. But in order to preserve some balance, usually you allow for a certain deviation. So you say, if the average constituency number must be 100,000, you can say that deviation from maybe 20% up, 20% down is reasonable within that range, or 10%, 10%, so that your hometown, for example, that is deserted will still have some representation. Not as much as Accra will have or Kumasi will have, but it will not be left unrepresented. That's the effect of capping the number. Once you cap it, it means that when the population grows, you have to redistribute the population among the constituencies. And those that have gained will get more constituencies and some will lose. So there has to be a science about it.
It also seems that this would deal with the use of this as a political tool for certain people, right? But how will it ensure that we don't see the same thing at the regional level? Because you mean over the dispensation of democracy since 1992, we've seen it grow over time. Now we are 16 regions. So at that level, what does this do?
I think there were some proposals there. I don't know if it's captured in the summary of main recommendations about regions. But I believe that we had submissions to the effect that the current mode of creating regions is too easy. It makes it very easy to even make a campaign promise of a region and to deliver on it because it's so easy to get. Once you get into office, you set up a little committee to go and talk to the people who want a region and come back and say, oh, is there really a need? And you do a referendum of only those people who want the region. I mean, come on. I mean, it's so easy to get, right? And I think that maybe an additional layer of approval, if you say, well, you can do that, but at least because you are changing the structure of the country, let's go to parliament for maybe a 2/3 vote, right? So in many places, it's not that you are just creating additional layers of popular participation in the decision making, because otherwise we will continue, we'll go to 20 regions.
But that is not in your amendment?
It's not currently. I don't think it's in this draft.
It's in this one, okay.
It may well be in the bigger document, even though we've tried as much as possible to reproduce here all the recommendations that we would find in the big one. There are some that, in fact, did not make it into this one, but they are not alarming. These are all...
Right. There's something also I read on the selection of caucus leadership in Parliament. I don't know if the MPs will be happy about this.
We don't know either, right? I mean,
but explain to us why you think that you should change the mode of selection in Parliament.
It's Parliament is for parliamentarians, right? We send them there, and it's all of us, right? It's not just parties who send parliamentarians there. They sponsor candidates on their ticket, but we as a people collectively send them there. And it's okay if Parliament, the party outside of Parliament, has an input. Because after all, these people are in your party for a reason. They might reflect your ideology, your belief system, and all of that. That's fine. But what we are trying to prevent is just the controlling hand of the party from outside going into Parliament and say, you do this, you do that, do it this way, do it that way, right? Then it takes away some of the benefit that we expect to get from choosing particular parliamentarians. They have differences in their capabilities. We might lose a lot of capability if you get into Parliament and for all the things you can contribute, your party dictates to you on whatever you must do. Then what's the point? then we lose the value you bring as an individual. So
but we also can't cleanly separate the MPs in Parliament from their parties.
No, we are not trying to do that. Okay. What we're saying is that clearly it's not possible, right? I mean, but you must allow them also some room, right? Allow them some room. They are not kids. Mm-hmm. You are not their guardian. They are adults. They are professionals. They know what they're doing, right? So don't issue edicts from the party office and say that we are boycotting Parliament today. Let them, they sit in Parliament. Let them make their decision.
So the proposal is that like they vote for the speaker.
Let them make their own choices about party leadership among themselves as a caucus. They can choose their own caucus. They are the ones in Parliament with these people. Who do they think is more capable to manage their business as a chief whip? Or who do they think? Those basic decisions. I think part of what we're trying to do also is that we know we have a multi-party democracy. We know that the parties are a significant part of this story. But they shouldn't dominate every aspect of our democracy. You can't have parties dominating in state-owned enterprises. They dominate. Then it becomes not about the people again. It's about parties. Mm. Parties are just a vehicle by which we aggregate our interests and our preferences and vote, and then we get into Parliament. But once the people get in, let them work, right? Mm. So this kind of is just the level of control. Obviously, parties will meet their caucus and say, Charlie, tomorrow this vote, you people shouldn't vote like that. Oh, that's fine. But don't issue party headquarters say, this is what we are, this is the one we are choosing.
And then dual citizenship will no longer be a problem for people seeking to be MPs?
Not at all. Why should it?
Why?
It's not even currently a problem under our laws now. You can be a dual citizen and be a chief justice, right? What's the point of it, right? What's a dual citizen? It's a citizen of Ghana who holds a second passport. What does it mean? It means nothing.
Issues of allegiance?
What allegiance? What allegiance are, what's the meaning of allegiance? I mean, does anybody swear allegiance to Ghana after you're born? A Ghanaian?
Well, by heritage, maybe?
Yeah, but how is allegiance? Allegiance doesn't run through blood. It runs through particular things you do. So do you have allegiance to Ghana when you are a mono citizen, but you are stealing from the people every day? Is that how allegiance is tested? Just because you have one single passport, but you can go to a public office and make away with $10 million of the people's money and feel good about it? What's the allegiance to Ghana, right? So we're saying that allegiance is something that should be tested some other way. Mere possession of a passport or a citizenship of another country, that's not in and of itself, should not be tantamount to you not having allegiance. People have second passports for all kinds of reasons, right? And in any case, let the constituents decide that amongst the people in our locality who we think can best represent us, it is Amidu we think can do the job.
Amidu who has perhaps an American citizenship.
Three passport. What was the point? The country whose citizenship you think is problematic, they allow your citizens to sit in their parliament. It doesn't cause any problem. So we're just trying to widen the pool, allow people to pick the most suitable person who can represent them. These are things that we've inherited. They are not based on any real statistics. There is no proof of anything that if you hold a citizen of another country that you don't feel.
Well, maybe because if that person has an option for a better country, then maybe they won't be doing a lot for this country. They wouldn't feel the pinch of what the ordinary citizen sees over here.
But what's the evidence of that, right? We don't know.
Public sentiment. You could just pick your passport, your other passport, and leave this country.
Oh, but there are people without even passport. They will get a visa any day they want. There are some people who don't care about the passport. They have only one Ghanaian passport, but they are always at the airport. They can go to any country they want because they have beaucoup cash, right? So it's not. But we're saying that there is much more symbolic value in saying that the one person who represents the country, whose face signifies the unity of the country, that person is the president. if there is any one office we must reserve exclusively for a Ghanaian and only a Ghanaian, that's the office.
So it does not apply to the office of the
not,
president.
Right. But we say beyond that, the case for it really is very weak. There's very little.
But what would be one good benefit of that to the Ghanaian people?
Is that you don't exclude people merely by their possession of a second passport. You allow the pool to be more competitive. I mean, why don't you want, so two brothers, let's say two brothers or two sisters from the same household, one travels, spends time abroad, comes with a passport, the other is here. The only reason you are not going to allow the two or the twin, let's say they are even twin, the other person to compete to get into parliament because they hold a passport, there should be more than that, right? It should be based on some act you have done that puts you outside of the category of the people we can trust. But if you're just going to get a passport to enable you travel out in and out of Ghana quickly, maybe take care of your family if they are based abroad, those are not things that should be disqualifying.
The committee is also proposing 5 years as tenure for both the presidency and parliament.
Yes. We had multiple submissions on that. We talked to people who have held the office before. We talked to others, and they said, well, look, it's short. And that's not the reason why we're necessarily saying we took their views over everybody else. Because we told them in rebuttal, we said, yeah, it's short, but it's your own time management. Nobody says you must take 6 months to set up a government. And nobody says you must spend the last half of your time as president campaigning. So it's your own management of your time. And that's not a constitutional problem, right? But then there was other piece of evidence that, okay, so what's the emerging global practice? What's the comparative record? How long do countries have their presidents stay for a term? And in West Africa, we realized that it ranges from 4 to 7 years. 4 is the shortest. Ghana and Nigeria. Benin now went to 7. 6 is common. I think Liberia has 6. A number of our peers, 5, 6, 5, 6. And the average is 5. So we said, look, numbers are arbitrary, but if it's average and the global average is moving from 4 to 5. And in any case, the 4 was just another tradition. Americans started the presidency. When they did, they said 4 years. So that's become the tradition. There's no magic to number 4, right? But then we also said something that we felt when we tested the idea out doing our deliberation. We said, okay, so do you think if a president after 4 years came to you and said, look, I've done 4 years, but give me four more years. And you say, well, yeah, we've given everybody 2 terms. Are you more likely to give that person 4 more years over somebody who has had 5 years and says, give me 5 more years? So what we're thinking is that actually you think that 5 is long, but on the flip side, people are likely to have less patience for a president who comes after 5 years and say, oh, I need more time. So we may actually end up with more one-term presidents after 5 years, right? It's unlikely that people will accept the excuse that, oh, 5 years is short. They are likely to accept that 4 years is short, but 5, even though it's 1 more year. So there are other dynamics there, right? But there were some who were asking for 7 years, who were asking for, 1 7-year term, and we thought, look, it's too long. We don't have recall provisions for presidents. So when you get stuck, unlike the parliamentary system where a vote of no confidence is possible. So in the parliamentary system, if you're a prime minister and your government loses support in parliament, you could actually, lose in the middle of your term.
Which is something, that prime minister system is something the report did not agree with.
The report, it wasn't even an issue that came before the report.
Okay.
What the interesting idea we got was that some were asking for a prime minister in place of a vice president. And it's an interesting, the story is interesting. So presidents choose their vice presidents before they get into office. And they choose it for a variety of reasons. Most of it is for politics. They choose it to balance the ticket. So if you are from a particular region, the idea is that you pick from another region so that your appeal of the whole ticket is broader. If you are male, you choose female so that you have a cross-gender appeal, that kind of stuff. So they choose them before they get into office. And sometimes when they get into office, it's not like they have bias remorse, but they feel like, but if I had a stronger person here or there or there. Yeah. So we say, but that's your own problem, right? Again, it's your own choice that you made. You could have chosen a different person for a different reason. You chose them for electoral advantage. And now that you are in the seat and think that you need somebody who is more managerial, more administrative, can do all these things, now you are coming back to say, can you give me the freedom to choose a prime minister? And we are saying, in any case, currently, nobody stops you. The same way that presidents can name senior ministers or call them whatever, coordinating minister, or whatever they choose to call them. Actually, our system as we currently run is not inconsistent with having a vice president. But you can't have it in place of the vice president. Right. And when we raised this issue amongst some of those who had held the seats before, it was interesting that clearly a prime minister brings certain things to the office that presidents like. Somebody who can do the day-to-day work, almost like a chief of staff, but with ministerial coordinating authority. But then there have been other experiences where, because the vice president is chosen with you on the same ticket, it's easy for people to accept that when or if something happens and you are no longer there, that person can step into your shoe because they already have been voted for indirectly by the people. A prime minister who gets appointed after you have entered office cannot step into your shoes and have the people accept it. So we were reminded by one former president that, look, similar situation happened in Cote d'Ivoire. They had a prime minister, no vice president. So they had a president and a prime minister without a vice president. And when the president died, the succession battle eventually led to a civil war in that country. So that was a caution. But while you may not see value in a vice president, even the insurance policy alone that they offer, that when somebody is not in this role, there's a seamless transition. That is value enough in our region, the kind of space we are in, so we should keep it. And we thought in any case, you can choose a prime minister. You can choose one if you want.
There are aspects of Chapter 2 that made me wonder whether or not the report was dangerously bordering on interfering with Parliament's standing orders.
Okay. Like
voting on constitutional amendments, which you say should not be by secret ballots, but it should be open and loud. Certificate of urgency, you also give new metrics. You are proposing new metrics on what should qualify as under certificate of urgency. Why these? Are you not going too far into standing orders of Parliament?
So again, and these are not standing order issues, right? So again, notice the theme for the Chapter 2, towards a people-centered democracy.
That's correct.
So what we are reflecting is a sentiment that our Parliament is distant from the people. It doesn't appear to represent the people. So here we are. Let me take the two issues. Why would you not like to know how your member of Parliament voted on a constitutional amendment issue that's before Parliament? Why should we not routinely know how our MPs vote on issues? We send them there to represent them, to represent us. And part of that representation is that they make laws for us. So we need to know, please, MP, on this Okada bill, how did you vote? On this proposal to change the constitution so that we either increase ex gratia or don't increase it or abolish it, how did you vote? Why is that one a secret? We can understand, and we left other ones to remain secret. We can understand, for example, when you are choosing speaker, that because the speaker will come to preside over the governance of the House and the business of the House, we don't want to create a situation where the speaker feels like, well, I know you didn't vote for me. I know you don't. Then you will never catch the eye of the speaker. So in voting for speaker, for example, it's allowed that the voting is secret. We kept that. And it's in the Constitution. It's not a standing order issue. Right. The Constitution is the one that is currently telling us that on constitutional amendment issues, the voting is secret. And we're saying, well, we don't particularly see why not. And then the certificate of urgency is another one. The certificate of urgency is actually even worse. So here you are, Parliament has a process by which it makes laws, a certain sequence, gazetting, this, that, first reading, second reading, all of those things. Then you allow, usually the government, to just come one day and say, hey, this bill needs to go, needs to be passed straight away, 24 hours, no questions asked. And they don't tell you why it's urgent, why they couldn't have seen the urgency earlier, what's the nature of the urgency, nothing. And then they just basically allow essentially the executive to hijack Parliament's process to just
under the guise of certificate of urgency.
Just because no questions asked. And we're saying no. We're not saying that you can't have certificate of urgency. We're saying there must be a process that constrains it. Give us reasons. Please, I mean, there's no, why must you pass this? And then some bills we say absolutely not. Why are you going to pass a $30 billion international agreement by certificate of urgency on the blind side of the people? We are going to pay for it. And you are saying that we should allow the Minister of Finance to use a certificate of urgency to go and get approval for an agreement like that. We're saying agreements are out. If it affects my human rights, it's out. So certain things like that, we're saying, no, these are no-go areas for certificate of urgency. For others, please follow some process. We're not taking too much of it. We want you to be accountable to the people.
Do you see the 2.7, the bit on the voting process, do you see it as being a safeguard for how this report turns out at the end of the day? When it talks about, accordingly, voting in Parliament on a bill to amend the Constitution shall be open, recorded, and made public. Is that a safeguard, in your opinion, as to how this document you have presented?
Well, I think you could say that, right? Because I think the people are entitled to know if we're making positive proposals for positive reform that would benefit our development, our governance, and our democracy, people should know which MP supports it and which MP doesn't support it, who's for it and who is not. Because it's also a safeguard in the sense that, remember that a lot of bills can originate in Parliament. Constitutional amendment bills can originate from MPs. So assuming that MPs decided that, look, let's just gang up, and originate a bill in Parliament to amend the Constitution and pay ourselves X amount of money. And that one will get quick bipartisan support. So they could get a 2/3 to change the Constitution, and we would not know how anyone voted on it. Right? We will just say, there is have it, 2/3. But how do we know that there was 2/3 when we don't even know who voted for it?
Yeah.
So clearly it's a safeguard. It's a safeguard, for both the ones who are supporting progress and the ones who are not. But it's not like we're targeting them that, no, I think, basically MP is not a lifetime career. You will become part of the citizenry again. I think for me, the idea is you should have a constitution must do for you some things that you would be happy with even if you didn't have power. Right? If you happen to be on the wrong side of power, would you like this? And the answer is yes, why not? But if you think of yourself as I'm always going to be in power, then you're never going to do anything progressive, right? So I think that those who are currently in politics must not see this as something that is targeting the political class or anything. Power is transient. Your membership of the class is transient. You will become part of the citizenry again. This is a rotation. So there's really not a matter of targeting anybody. All we're saying is that for the good of the country, if you were not in power, would you not like to be governed this way?
Thank you so much for sitting
Thanks for the opportunity. I have really enjoyed this. This is fantastic.
I'm glad you did.
I've enjoyed this.
I really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you so
for the
much. Thank you
opportunity.
so much. This is Hot Issues. Thank you so much for your company. We are not able to bring you all of the interview in this 1 hour episode, but catch the rest on our social media handles, including YouTube. I'm Keminia Mana. See you same time next week. Bye-bye.